Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the Austrian Grand Prix debrief. What a race that was. For me, best one of the season so far, and just what we needed after a very poor showing at Paul Ricard. Now obviously there is plenty to talk about, but let's start as we always do by having a quick look at the final race result. It was Max Verstappen who took victory, ending Mercedes' run of 8 consecutive Grand Prix wins. Charles Leclerc was second, but all of that was not without controversy. More on that later. And it was Valtteri Bottas who rounded off the podium for Mercedes, just ahead of Sebastian Vettel in 4th and Lewis Hamilton down in 5th. Lando Norris was 6th for McLaren, Pierre Gasly only 7th and a lap off his teammate. More on him briefly later. Carlos Sainz in 8th for McLaren. And then it's points all round at Alfa Romeo, 9th for Kimi Raikkonen and 10th for Antonio Giovinazzi. Sergio Perez was 11th for Racing Point, then come the 2 Renaults before the next Racing Point of Lance Stroll in 14th. It wasn't a great weekend for Toro Rosso, 15th for Alex Albon and 17th for Kvyat, sandwiching Romain Grosjean in 16th. And then the final 3 places were taken up by George Russell, Kevin Magnussen and Robert Kubica. No retirements in Austria. Now obviously when it comes to race talking points, there is really only one place to start, and that is with the Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc incident. First of all, I've got to say that Leclerc drove extremely well pretty much all weekend and absolutely deserved pole position. Cracking lap on Saturday. He got off the line well as well at the start and pretty much looked in complete and total control until the last few laps. Max, though, had the opposite start, a very poor one as the anti-stall kicked in, and that saw him drop down to 7th place on lap 1, but he fought back absolutely brilliantly, both through strategy and overtaking, to bring himself right back into play as the race began to draw to a close. Great stuff to watch. Verstappen pushed very hard to close down Leclerc, and on lap 69 made his move for the lead. Max went for the inside at turn 3, went in deep, and Leclerc tried to hang his Ferrari around the outside. However, the two made wheel-to-wheel contact. Charles ended up off the track and Max took the lead. The stewards decided to investigate the incident, and in the end, I think it was something like 3 hours after the Grand Prix had finished, decided that no further action was necessary, as they felt that no driver was wholly or predominantly to blame and ruled that it was a racing incident. Now, of course, both drivers had very differing viewpoints on the incident, with Max Verstappen saying that he feels it was just hard racing. From my side, I think it's racing. We all know there's a crest in that corner as well, so if you take the crest wrong because we both went a bit straight on, at one point you run out of room. But it is hard racing. It's better than just following each other and having a boring race. Charles didn't agree, obviously, saying that Max didn't leave him a car's width when making the move. It was pretty clear in the car. I don't know how it looked from the outside. The lap before was completely fine. He left the space a car's width on the exit of the corner, but he didn't on the other lap. I had to go wide and then I didn't have any chance to come back. It's a shame. So, as I always do, I've watched the incident back a few times today, including F1's video, which shows apparently all the angles. And honestly, my viewpoint is exactly the same as it was last night. I do not believe that's a penalty. For one, the replay show that Max is ahead. Okay, it is by the tiniest of margins, but he is ahead. At that point, the corner, in my view, is his and Charles should be conceding, tucking back underneath and coming back at him on the run to turn 4. With that, though, it comes down to what I seem to be saying every weekend at the moment, and that is that if there is gravel or grass on the outside of turn 3, Charles concedes and we're not having this argument. The fact that there is a concrete runoff area means that he knows he can keep his foot in around the outside with minimal punishment. Now, I'm not going to put the blame at either driver's door for that incident. Max could have absolutely left more room. Of course he could. Charles could have conceded the corner, but neither did at the end of the day. It was aggressive, but it's hard racing. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other in that situation. And I've got to say, if the boot was on the other foot, Leclerc would have done exactly the same thing. And whilst I'm on it as well, if the roles were reversed, Binotto would be saying it was hard racing and Horner would be screaming penalty. It was one of those moments. Again, I get it was hard, it was aggressive and there was contact. But I'll repeat what I just said again, Max had that corner and Charles ought to have conceded. What I will add though, or I guess question really, is why did Leclerc not defend that inside line? Genuinely, that really surprised me. When I saw Verstappen lining him up out of turn 1 and on the run to turn 3, I fully expected that Ferrari to move to the inside, cover that line and then run the Red Bull out of room on the exit. And do you know what? Maybe if that situation presents itself again, he will do. My final word on this point, though, as we did cover it for the best part of 2 hours last night, is that in my personal opinion, that was hard racing and no penalty, and any driver in Max Verstappen's position would have done exactly the same. There are a couple of other things I want to say around the penalty, though. First of all, I'm pleased that the stewards chose to talk to the drivers before making a final call, a snap decision, if you like. It's what a lot of people were screaming for after Canada, and we got that in this instance. It did take a long time though, but that was apparently due to all the media commitments the drivers have to attend before they do anything else. In future though, maybe they could grab the drivers straight after the race and tell the media they're just going to have to wait. Of course, I know there are tight TV schedules to consider, but waiting for a result for 3 hours after the race is a bit much. Again though, it is good that the stewards spoke to Verstappen and Leclerc before making a decision. The absolute, genuinely final thing I want to say on all of this though is that the incident between Verstappen and Leclerc is completely different to the one between Vettel and Hamilton in Canada and the one between Norris and Ricciardo in France. There are a few people screaming that it's an inconsistent decision, and I do sort of get what they're saying because the FIA have kind of backed their stewards into a corner. They have been applying penalties for every little misdemeanor over recent seasons and this season as well. And I have to say that even though I don't think it was a penalty, I was utterly convinced they were going to give one. So I sort of get the frustration and the outcry from some, but in my view, comparisons can't really be drawn between yesterday's incident and the two that I just mentioned. They were completely different circumstances and totally different scenarios. Super quickly, I do need to give a shout out to Honda. What a result for them. It's been a rough and long road, but it's great to see all of their hard work finally paying off. According to F1, that was apparently their first win in 12 years, 10 months and 24 days, or as I prefer to put it, their first win since Jenson Button in Hungary back in 2006. Congratulations, Honda. Absolutely well deserved. But anyway, let's move on to their teammate. Sebastian Vettel had a frustrating qualifying. He looked set to be right up there, possibly helping Ferrari lock out that front row of the grid. That was, though, until the team discovered a problem with the air pressure line to the engine, and despite their best efforts, they couldn't fix it, meaning he couldn't get a run in Q3, and he ended up starting down in 9th place. He did have a good first lap, making up a few places, and his pace was solid. And as you saw at the start, he wasn't all that far away from taking that final podium spot. In fact, I reckon one more lap and he could have had Bottas. Actually though, do you know what? As I sit here thinking about it, had his first pit stop gone to plan, he probably would have been past the fin with a lap or two to spare. If you didn't see it, Ferrari called Vettel in on the same lap as Bottas, which meant that the Mercedes was held a little bit longer in the box than they would have liked. But Ferrari did not have all of the Germans' tyres ready, and his stop was about 3 seconds longer than it should have been. So, looking at it again, that probably cost him a podium. I'd not thought about that yesterday, and that has genuinely just come to me. All in all, though, it was an Austrian Grand Prix that Seb summed up as, quote, an almost weekend. I think that is pretty much spot on, but he did go on to say that he enjoyed being able to go wheel to wheel with others during the race, and to be honest, from a neutral perspective, it was great to see him fighting his way back through the field. As for the other Red Bull of Pierre Gasly, I mean, what do you want me to say? Shocking, really. Absolutely shocking. I'm not going to say too much on him in this video because we did discuss it in yesterday's race reaction, and to be honest, I kind of want to do a video later this week where I can go over all of his performances, or lack of, and go a bit more in-depth about his season so far. I will say though, he was briefly ahead of his teammate on the first lap thanks to Verstappen's poor start, yet somehow ended up a full lap behind Max. Absolutely unacceptable. That car, as was proven, was quick enough to win the race, or at the very least in his case, challenge for a podium. Yet he was nowhere near where he should have been, finished behind a McLaren and even struggled to pass Kimi Raikkonen's Alfa. Yeah, I know, Kimi is massively experienced and knows how to defend, but Lando Norris passed him and it's his first season in F1. No excuses. Just an extremely poor weekend from Pierre, and quite frankly, I think he will be lucky to see out the season if he doesn't get his act together quickly. As I say though, more on that in a later video. On the subject of poor weekends, it wasn't a good one at all for Mercedes. As I said in yesterday's reaction stream though, a poor weekend for the Silver Arrows still sees them finishing in 3rd and 5th. Valtteri Bottas said that the team expected the weekend to be a difficult one, but they made the most of it. He didn't look overly thrilled on the podium, it must be said, but he did close the championship lead down to his teammate, so I guess that's something for him this weekend. All of them though, Bottas, Hamilton and Toto Wolff were singing from the same hymn sheet after the race, blaming overheating, which in turn meant that the car was, quote, unraceable. They also apparently had to avoid higher engine modes because of the heat, and Toto Wolff even said that the team's Achilles heel had been exposed. As well as the overheating issues, Lewis Hamilton's front wing ended up getting damaged during the race, and that cost him time both on track and in the pit lane as it needed to be changed. In the team's post-race press release, the world champion said, "There's going to be more hot races coming up like Budapest, so we'll need to get on top of this. I also damaged my front wing on the curb, so we had to change it, which cost us a bit of time as well. It's just one of those bad days in the office, but at least I still got some good points with 5th place." It will be interesting to see if this is a one-off or whether they will struggle at other tracks that have high temperatures, like he said there, Budapest. Frankly though, despite a disappointing weekend from their perspective, I don't think they need to worry too much about this turning the championship on its head. It's all looking very comfortable for them still. Let's run through the rest of the field then, once again starting at McLaren, and that was another cracking weekend for the Woking team. Without putting the jinx on it, they really do look like best of the rest at the moment. Lando Norris was excellent again, and he showed that he was not afraid to go toe-to-toe with the best drivers on the grid. He fought hard on the opening lap with Lewis Hamilton, and honestly, that was great to see and made some really strong moves to cement that 6th place finish. Going back a week to Paul Ricard, it was a frustrating end to the Grand Prix for him there, and this was the perfect way to bounce back from that. His teammate had an equally impressive day. The Spaniard ended up 19th on the grid thanks to grid penalties, but executed the team's strategy to perfection. 41 laps on the mediums during the first stint, and after his pit stop he just cracked on with the overtaking. Great stuff, and although the TV direction was better this weekend, it would have been nice to have seen a bit more of his journey through the field. Apparently, the Spaniard's front wing got damaged 10 laps from the end of the race, and Sainz believes that without the damage he could have caught and passed Pierre Gasly. Still though, great recovery. Another team who had a fantastic weekend were Alfa Romeo. Kimi Raikkonen had a brilliant start and was running as high as 4th at one point. He's definitely still got it. Unfortunately though, as you'd probably expect, the pace wasn't there to fend off the likes of Verstappen and co for long, and Kimi alluded to that in his post-race quotes. But he did say that the car's performance is improving and that they can be, quote, very satisfied with the result. Antonio Giovinazzi finally grabbed his first point in F1 and he was understandably extremely happy, describing the result as a big weight off his shoulders. He did go on to add though that he feels the result was the maximum the team could have achieved. Really good result for him. There were some interesting scenes post-race as Frederic Vasseur chased down the Italian and cut off some of his hair. Now apparently Gio had told Vasseur that he could cut his hair if he scored a point. The Italian clearly wasn't keen on the idea though. But I've got to say, the most important lesson from this weekend for Alfa though is do not run with scissors. Come on, Frederic. Down at Racing Point, Sergio Perez said that 11th was just the reality of the car's pace and the points were out of reach for them this weekend. He does believe though that he gave it absolutely everything he could in trying to chase down Antonio Giovinazzi for 10th place. His teammate Lance Stroll says that he had some power unit issues to manage for about 10 laps of the race and believes that that cost him around 6 seconds. But let's be honest, that only really means that he missed out on finishing 13th rather than 14th. It just wasn't a good weekend for Racing Point, and it hasn't really been a very good back-to-back for them. All eyes on Silverstone though, and maybe they can challenge for points again there. Renault had a really quiet race. In fact, I've got to be honest, aside from Gasly passing Ricciardo, I don't really recall seeing too much of them. The Aussie admitted that he was struggling for grip during the race and added that, quote, something wasn't right this weekend. That was echoed by his teammate who said that the team can't be happy with the weekend as a whole, admitting that there were multiple issues with the car, with Cyril Abiteboul saying that the track exposed the car's weaknesses. Renault are another team that have got a lot of work to do during the 2 weeks before the British Grand Prix. Again, Toro Rosso were another team who appeared to struggle. Alex Albon, who of course took grid penalties after quali, says that it was the first stint that cost them so much time and the car's pace was definitely better during the second stint. He did also bemoan the issues they had with the car's balance for the second race in a row. Daniel Kvyat summed up his weekend by saying, quote, it wasn't exactly the most enjoyable race of my life. Apparently the Russian was also carrying more downforce during the Grand Prix and became a bit of a sitting duck on the straight. But when it comes to Toro Rosso, I think Franz Tost sums it up absolutely perfectly. There is not much to say, we did not perform well today. Haas had yet another thoroughly miserable weekend, and after the promising pace they had earlier in the season, currently look as though they are right down the bottom of the pecking order, well, apart from one team, obviously. Romain Grosjean said that he had no grip early on in the race and struggled with a lack of balance, and Kevin Magnussen, who of course qualified 5th before he took the gearbox penalty, so again, the pace is clearly there in the car, but the Dane described it as a frustrating day and added that it all felt pretty hopeless. Gunther Steiner, by the way, also admitted once again that the team do not understand and have no clue what is causing them the issues they currently face. And finally, Williams. Let's start with the driver of the day, according to the fan vote. Yep, you heard that right. Robert Kubica was lapped 3 times, finished comfortably last, and his best lap of the entire Grand Prix was a second slower than his teammate. I can totally see why people felt he was worthy of the Driver of the Day award. Fantastic decision. Anyway, the poll again bemoaned the car's lack of pace and says that he continues with a lack of overall grip. And to be honest, it just wasn't really a very good day for him. He's really struggling this season to get going in that Williams. Don't get me wrong, terrible car, but he is being well beaten by his teammate. He needs to step up. George Russell, who actually got involved in a fight with the Toro Rossos and one of the Haas boys at one point in the race, said that there were some positives the team can take away from the weekend, even if they are still a long way off where they want to be. By the way, super quickly, I do stand by my pick in yesterday's stream for driver of the day, and that's Max Verstappen, but Leclerc, Norris and Sainz all absolutely deserve a mention. Before I go then, let's have a quick look at the championship table, starting with the top 10 in the drivers. Lewis Hamilton is still top, although his lead is now just 31 points over teammate Valtteri Bottas. Max Verstappen moves back into third place on 126, 3 clear of Sebastian Vettel in fourth. Charles Leclerc is fifth for Ferrari on 105, and then comes Pierre Gasly in sixth on 43 points, just 13 clear of Carlos Sainz's seventh. And then we've got Lando Norris 8th on 22, Kimi Raikkonen 9th on 21, and Daniel Ricciardo 10th on 16. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes, despite a difficult weekend, are still comfortable at the top, 363 points for them. Ferrari are second on 228, and Red Bull remain third on 169 points. McLaren are still best of the rest, 52 points for them, 20 clear of Renault in fifth. And then we've got Alfa Romeo in sixth on 22 points, Racing Point 7th on 19. Toro Rosso are 8th on 17 points, 16 points for Haas in 9th, and Williams, of course, are yet to score in 10th. That is it then for the Austrian Grand Prix debrief, but don't forget you can let me know your thoughts about the weekend down in the comment section. Now, I will be back soon with more content as ever, but in the meantime, don't forget that you can follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.